David Garfield is the co-CEO over at Alex Partners, and he joins us right now. And David, our previous guest was kind of alluding, at least from a market perspective, to this idea that why there was so much pessimism earlier this year was kind of because of the uncertainty, the idea that nobody knew what the tariffs would be. They didn't know where we were going. And now that we have a little bit more clarity, people are kind of coming back out into the sun. That's the market narrative. I am curious as to what you're hearing from the corporate side, from the C-suite, as to whether now there is a little bit more renewed optimism since there is maybe a little bit more clarity about what's coming.
I would say that there's a great deal of pragmatism coming out of the C-suite at the moment. There's still a lot of uncertainty. There's still evolution in tariff and trade policy. There's still gyrations in market valuations. But what CEOs have clearly determined is that they still need to make decisions, take actions, and place bets. And so after some initial pauses in projects and proposals, they're moving forward, and they have more confidence as a result.
One of the big concerns coming into this year with a lot of these companies was how quickly they would be able to adapt, not just to tariffs, but so many changes to our economy based on policies coming out of Washington. And I am curious as to how you gauge the effectiveness of companies, of those CEOs, being able to kind of turn their ships, if you will, around depending on what's coming out down the pipe.
A key thing is for CEOs to move forward even in the face of uncertainty and against some of the headwinds. And there are some things that are no regret moves, even when there is questions about how your market conditions are going to evolve. Things like stress testing your balance sheet and your cash flow so that you have the flexibility and the resiliency to deal with more volatility if it comes your way. Doubling down on your customers, because deepening relationships with customers helps you defend as well as capture market share. And then just communicating internally, making sure that your employees actually understand why there's volatility in the marketplace and what the new or renewed priorities are for the enterprise.
I am curious about what's going on the companies that have more direct exposure to tariffs. Today we were talking about PVH, which just reported earnings, a big apparel maker. This whole week we're getting a lot of earnings out of the apparel makers. So we're hearing a lot about tariffs. It's not necessarily as dour as what we saw. Yeah, there are increased costs. Some companies eating those costs, some finding a way to nudge some of those costs onto the consumer. As we get deeper into this year and next, when the tariff impact will be maybe a little bit more preeminent, do you think companies will be able to have that pricing power to still go to their customers and say, we have no choice to bump prices higher?
A couple of things are going on. First of all, it is the big dilemma for tariff-impacted businesses trying to decide how much of that tariff impact to absorb and how much to pass through is a really critical decision, which is why we're spending a lot of time talking to senior executives about their pricing strategies, making sure that they have the accuracy and the speed in their pricing processes to execute the right decisions. But as time progresses and the impact of tariffs mount, one of the key things that executives have to contend with is not just the short-term objective of defending their margins, but the long-term objective of attracting and retaining customers. So what we're advising clients is balance the short-term imperatives around margin with the long-term customer strategies and support your brand.
I am curious with regards to raising prices, what your general advice would be on the transparency in that. I mean, some companies have been pretty explicit, we're doing this because of tariffs. Others have just kind of maybe snuck the price increases in there and didn't really make much of a to-do about it, if you will.
Right. Our advice is communicate with clarity and context. What we mean by that is we do advocate transparency, but make clear that to your customers and to the end consumers that your pricing is not just about your input costs. It's about the value that your products and services deliver and your brand positioning. If customers and consumers understand the full picture, they're more likely to accept your pricing decisions.
Yeah. All right, David, great stuff. David Garfield there. He is the co-CEO of Alex Partners. A closer look at some of the advice being given to the C-suite.